time around, and the Wildland Urban Interface Code. And then we work with the other code action committees, the Building Code Action Committee, Plumbing, Mechanical, and, well, we could work with the SEPCAC, but this Sustainable Energy High Performance Building Group, but don't really have a lot of overlap with them typically. So Group A is nearing completion. It's not complete yet because we're waiting on the online government consensus vote. It looks like early next week is when the sort of unofficial results will be posted, because they're not official until they're both audited and approved by the board. But admittedly, there is very few instances where that would affect anything, but we need to go through those procedures to make sure everything is valid. So we'll have a better idea of what the results are. And as you recall, so we had code action hearings, which were interesting this past spring, that were virtual for everybody but the committee and staff. And then we had the public comment hearings, which were actually pretty well attended in September. All the months are blending together. And 2 weeks or so after that, we had the online government consensus vote process begin, and that closed up on the 1st of November. So ultimately, the results will be whatever happens in that vote. And the only things that were voted on in that, of course, were the items that were on the individual agenda at the public comment hearing. Did not have a public comment, was complete. So just looking ahead, Group B, the deadline is January 10th. And the hearings will be as they were originally scheduled, hopefully. And nothing has changed otherwise. That's the plan. In March 27th to April 6th in Rochester, New York, which I'm excited because I can actually drive to that one. And then the public comment hearings are scheduled for September 14th to 21st in Louisville, Kentucky. All that is on the website. The only updates were what they put in last year to put the update for the virtual hearings. But I believe that there's just going to be one track at that hearing in Rochester as well, because we don't have, as you know, we don't have the energy code going on during. I think it will just be one track, which will make it a little easier to manage, a little bit longer maybe. All right. So with the scheduling, I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. We can go, well, we'll wait to the end and we can kind of gather up any questions. We have been kind of refining during COVID. We went virtual, of course, with FCAC, and we kind of refined our work a little bit because we realized we had so many different things going on. So we've been kind of forming, anybody following work groups. We have 6 main work groups. They're divided into passive fire protection, active enforcement, inspection, testing, and maintenance, energy issues, special occupancies, and hazardous materials to help us group things. It's pretty much how the BCAC has been working, and I think that help us organize what we're doing further going forward, because I do anticipate primarily virtual for Fire Code Action Committee, at least next year, and I have a feeling that's going to be a little bit more of the norm. Code action committees. I guess we made it work well enough. I don't know, but it also it's been kind of nice because I feel like we've been able to engage a lot more people than we used to. I have about 300 people or so on my email list that I send out. I have to send it in a couple separate emails just to make sure it doesn't look too much like spam. People got a little excited at first when I put them all in the same email. So with that, I mean, we've been kind of our topics within those work groups, and it's starting to help us organize a little bit more, and it helped a lot during the pandemic. But some statistics I was briefly going through. Hopefully this it may not be exact, but it's pretty close. And sometimes we have proposals we work with BCAC or we work on, and because we're not scoped to deal with it, they'll take it on. So there's some proposals I'm probably forgetting about that may say BCAC, but really were coming from the Fire Code Action Committee. When I was looking at the IFC proposals, 59 of them from the cycle were from FCAC. 52 of those appear to be approved in some form. Some were, approved as submitted, approved as modified, or during the public comment. There was 5 that were disapproved and 2 that we withdrew during that process. So considering that we're virtual, did pretty well for proposals getting that in. And we also had the Wildland Urban Interface Code. We had 4 proposals that were all approved through that process. There's only one, I think, that went through it. I have stats on the public comments a little bit too. One that went through public comment process. Actually, a couple may have gone through, but came from us. One did. Fire safety proposals, we had 15. 12 of them were approved, 3 were disapproved. And then I was briefly looking to see, because we had the other thing is there's certain items that come up during the public comment hearing, the Code Action Committee, that FCAC kind of took interest in. And we'll talk about some of those as we go through some of the key issues that I kind of pulled out as takeaways from this past cycle. But for the IFC, we had 12 public comments. They weren't all to our items. And fire safety, why did I say we only had 1? I think we had 2. Maybe I think we had 2. And the Wildland Urban Interface, we had 1, which was to further revise. So briefly, some of the key topics that we kind of got, some of these big ones ended up happening more because we reacted to an initial proposal, but a big one that that passed during the public comment hearing was more broadly requiring CO protection, alarms and detection, which kind of goes to any occupancy that has what we call a CO source. So we're still, we're going to have to understand that, and there's a definition that goes along with that. So that is something that we'll probably have to further study to make sure that, for the next code cycle too. But that was a big one, a big shift, because there was an advocate who had lost her parents, and she had written a proposal that was fairly broad, and we tried to bring it in. One of the big issues was swimming pools, and some incidents that have happened because of swimming pools and the heaters within hotels. Something that keeps us busy over the last couple cycles is energy storage systems. We had a number of proposals on that. Some of the outcomes of that is getting some carve-out exceptions for certain technologies. It's consistent with NFPA 855. We also, in a public comment to a proposal that wasn't ours, we are now, well, if it passes through everything, referencing 855 along with the requirements of 1207, sort of a transition process. There's been some concern about the scoping of 855, and I know their next edition, they're looking at, you can see the draft, there's a scope being drafted, but it didn't have a scope because it was heavily debated on what that would cover. But we still have the reference to 1207, which is sort of our ESS, and 855, which are incredibly similar because they kind of grew out of the same thing, essentially. There was some more refinement of the residential ESS to be consistent with the residential code, and I hope that that consistency continues on to the IRC. But we were actually just trying to catch up with the 2021 code in the IFCs to look like what the IRC was doing. Alcohol hand sanitizer, again, and not initially a FCAC proposal, came from UL. There was some proposals from GSA. I'm trying to deal with the fact that all the stuff was stockpiled in buildings and how to, we only had provisions that were based for hospitals. So that was cleaned up. And so there's not just the wall mounted, it's also freestanding stuff. There's more work needed. One of the PCs that we had that Bruce Johnson from UL kind of helped with a little task group on that came to FCAC was to have some kind of guidance for storage in buildings. That didn't quite get there, so we're going to have to keep working on that. But we did clean up a lot of the other things to not just be sort of hospital-centric or healthcare-centric. As we know, it's absolutely everywhere. I was just in my car. It's in every door, everywhere I go. Portable spray booths was another one that had been kind of debated whether or not to just outright. I think for now they're prohibited. It gives a little bit of leeway to the code official to be able to deal with some of those. Those are popping up a lot of different places. Flammable refrigerants was another big one. Really what the Fire Code Action Committee could do and the Fire Code could do was deal with the regulation flammable refrigerants in terms of the storage of the material when not in use in a refrigeration system. So there was work to use the global harmonization standards to kind of divide the flammable gas definition into two pieces, higher level flammable gases, lower level, which gives a little bit more leeway. And there's some increases in maximum allowable quantities for the lower flammability refrigerants for simply, again, just the storage prior to its use. And there was work a bit in the mechanical code to kind of clarify things, but mostly we were focused in on sort of the hazmat part of it. A big one that I was happy to be, we were able to affect some change through FCAC was, and there was a lot of folks that participated in this, and I think maybe Marcella Hirschler came to us with this idea, and also I know that the NAMBA was also involved in wanting to get a clarification of the triggers for exterior wall testing to 285 to make it clear, because I feel like with that particular subject, a lot of the pieces are there, but having a nice clarification section that says for this material, you go here and you need this, these all need to meet 285. So I think that's a big step in getting more compliance on exterior walls, which is a very complicated subject. There's so many things. Just putting a water barrier in, that's why we have testing requirements, can make a big difference. With the wildland urban interface, one of the key items was number 50, wildland urban interface 15, which provides with the public comment, 2 paths for compliance for roof vents. There's a prescriptive limit, and then there's also you use the provisions used in California, performance path of a standard you could test to see how the vent does. So there's 2 paths. I think it's good to have a little bit of both. So there's a quick, easy prescriptive method, but if that doesn't work, there's an option there for testing. Better refinement of the sprinkler protection for distilled spirits, kind of based on FM. FM worked with us quite heavily to share the information they had done in their testing. We will watch that in future cycles, I think, to make sure that, if it gets into 30, I believe it's 30 that it would go into, that, or 13, I think 30, that we would be, maybe we would pull some of that stuff out if it's already addressed in the standards. And hydrogen mobile fueling was added. We participated with that because that's probably going to become a bigger issue as time goes on for fuel cell vehicles, that kind of technology. And there was a reorg of the construction fire safety provisions. I think we made a lot of changes in 2021, but it kind of cleaned up the order of the provisions. And I know I could probably go on and on, but those are some of the big issues that came out. I'll probably get off this call and say, oh yeah, I forgot about this big item that we've been dealing with. Next year, I think next year is Group B. We don't have much scope in Group B, so we can't submit code changes. You're not going to see you might see us jointly on something, but there's obviously the IRC has provisions related to fire, CO, ESS, things like that. IEBC has provisions related to fire safety. We have been pursuing some items, working with BCAC, because this is what we can do. We can discuss the issue, see if BCAC might take it on, or get other organizations, alert them to our interest in this, and maybe they'll submit something. But we'll monitor and watch that process and respond to any questions that BCAC has. They share with us any administrative changes or anything they think that might affect our area of interest before they submit anything. But it is a bit of a quiet year. We'll probably spend a lot of time kind of following up. What did we set out to do before the last cycle and our topic list and all that? What did we end up accomplishing? What do we need to then refine and work on for the next cycle, do some brainstorming before the next grouping of things begins, which really the next FCAC cycle doesn't begin until January 2023. So it gives us a chance to kind of do some organizing. And like I said, since we're really going to be aiming more virtual, I think we're going to keep trying to organize ourselves better and better with the work groups and how we get the information out, things like that. And the fire code, I feel like we're still working on the commentary a bit for 2021, and as we're also working on the 2024 fire code, it's getting me a little confused. But we're moving ahead. We're busy, and hopefully we'll, be right on schedule for the next. It's hard to believe that we're even talking about proposals potentially for 2027. But I don't know, Carl.
No, Beth, I think you covered a lot of it there. I think there's maybe a couple pieces to hit. We talked a little bit about maybe taking the time next year to talk a little bit about kind of structural changes or policy on some of the codes and where they live and organization and that kind of stuff with FCAC a little bit. So maybe that was something that we could hit on. And then I know there are going to be a couple of structural changes just in terms of personnel on FCAC that are coming up here that'll be reviewed by the board too. So those are the only other two pieces that I kind of had to add, and I didn't know if you wanted to put a couple more words to any of that or not. But those are the only other thing I could think of. So
yeah, I mean, I admittedly I have a running list of my own of things that I, whether it's some of the items we talked about like CO or alcohol hand sanitizer. But I feel like, for instance, especially when I'm working on the commentary for the hazmat chapters, I mean, should we have a very, purposeful review of every hazmat chapter? Maybe that's part of what we do in our next round. I mean, this is just a staff suggestion, but I might throw those concepts into the ring to make sure, because sometimes I feel like those chapters don't get the attention. We focus a lot on sort of the beginning of the fire code. And maybe put some concerted effort into working on some of those to make sure everything's up to date. The fruit ripening chapter, is it still relevant? Do we need to do some updates? Things like that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that I think we'll go through and we'll talk about like where do we see some of this stuff in the future and do some prioritization. I'm hoping we do a little bit more of that by work group and still have the ability to have task groups that go off and kind of work on something and bring it back to the work group. But yeah, I think some of that we just fall out. With the list of items, I know, Carl, we've talked a little bit about some of that just to be thinking maybe a little above that. But ultimately, of course, it's up to FCAC what they want to take on, the need for code changes, things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, and we've got, so Chief O'Brien is going to step down as chair of the FCAC, and also he's reached his term limit there in participation. So we'll have a new FCAC chair after the December 10th board meeting. There are a few other name changes that are happening there, but yeah, I think it'll be good for us. So you can see that Beth and I plot a little bit on how we can effectively use the FCAC's free time so that they're not as idle maybe as they could potentially be during the next cycle. So we have plans. So I guess I'd leave it at that. So anyway, Beth, thanks a lot. I don't know if are there any specific questions from the audience at all too that folks you'd like to ask Beth a couple of things while we've got her here? If so, just speak up or raise your hand and we'll call on you. Okay. Beth, I know you all just had the FSFPE conference. You've been a member there for years as well. I'm going to maybe brag a little bit about you too and say that just as a quick note, I'm really looking forward to working with Beth in the next year, particularly as she's now the incoming president of the Society for Fire Protection Engineers. And I think not only is that a great personal achievement for Beth, but I think having her on the ICC staff and being able to work together with her out advocating for things that both of our organizations are excited about will only bring great things in 2022. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carol.
Great. Thank you again, Beth, for being here. A lot of great information. All right, moving on the agenda. Opening remarks from the chair. I really don't have anything other than something that's further down on the agenda, so I will wait. And I'm looking to see if anyone has any additions or corrections to the agenda. Hearing none. We have 2 months of minutes that need approval. Carl sent them on a very recent email. If you haven't opened up the email yet, perhaps you could take a minute to do that. We have a September 19th. That was the hybrid in-person Webex meeting. And thank you, Carl, for putting that up. And then our last meeting, October 21st, which was our standard virtual meeting. So I am looking for a motion for approval.
Christine Coy Porter, move to adopt.
Great, I hear a motion. Is there a second?
This is Kelly, I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? All right, approved. Thank you very much. So let's move into the work group updates. First is member recruitment. I don't know if Andy King or Gary West has come on the call to give an update. Doesn't look like it, so we will skip them. Emerging issues and trends. Tim Diehl, since Michael is wasn't able to make it today. Tim, you have an update for us.
Not really. We haven't. We did review our annual report and get it submitted in time. We have the 21 or the 22 goals ready also. And we should be having another meeting coming up. I think we're going to try to do one next month before the end of the year, before our next meeting. So with Michael off, that's all I got.
Great, thank you. Public awareness, Steve.
Hi. Yeah, we don't have a whole lot either. We, in honor of our veterans, we canceled this month's meeting. Thanks to Christine, though, we did get our annual report in. Thank you for doing that. And then we have our goals to still work on. We'll work on those the next meeting. And then hopefully next month after my first meeting, I'll have a little more for you.
Great, thank you. Training and education, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Quick update for me as well. We've had a couple meetings here over the past few months, but they've been lightly attended by, like the others have said. So we're continuing to have a list to track educational opportunities that interest the council. So if anyone gets something like that might be a seminar or a conference that we would have an interest in, please feel free to send that my way, especially the calls for proposals. We'll keep a running list of those and try to submit where we can. A few of the upcoming ones in the nearest future would be the Vision 2020 Symposium in February in Tennessee. Colorado Chapters Educational Institute will be coming up in March, and EduCode will be coming up in Las Vegas late February and early March. So those are probably our closest ones. We also completed our annual reports, and we'll be working on our goals for 2022 at our next meeting. That will be December the 1st at 11 a.m. Central. We'll probably also discuss other potential meeting days and times just to see what works best, since we have struggled with some members in our working group. But I think that's all I've got. We'll send out a notice for that meeting and let me or Carl or Tim know if you'd like to be invited and like to join in on that.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. All right, moving on in the agenda, we have reports from officers. We have Director Sayers on the meeting today. Good afternoon, Director. Would you like to say a few words?
Certainly, Chief Reed. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure to be here. Glad to see a good turnout. Not a lot to report on right now as far as the board's concerned. Most of our November talking points are for things that have already happened or are in process. So today's the last day for Learn Live. I don't know if anybody has taken advantage of that, but you know, it was a great opportunity for anybody that attended the ABM to also get some free training with ICC Learn Live. So when those things, when we have those opportunities, we need to take advantage of them. And I hope several people did. The board is meeting. Let's see, December 3rd, we're going to have our budget overview. Budget committee is meeting now, as well as the initial meeting for the new board members, Randy Metz and Ben Bredmore. They're getting their shall we say, their opportunity to go, oh gee, what did I step into? No, no, not really. It's a good time to go over a lot of the things that the board needs to be doing and be aware of, and those kinds of things. We're meeting, our winter meeting is in Solvang, California, and that's December 9th through the 12th. Of course, the committee action hearings are going to be coming up next spring in Rochester. Looking forward to that. Other than that, we're just getting geared up. Just got a whole bunch of emails on, bylaw things, since I'm the bylaws committee chair this year. So, we'll be looking into, some things that we may want to bring forward, and maybe we'll look through things and find that we don't need to bring anything forward. But one other thing we'll probably be discussing at our December meeting is we've got some pretty big news, I think, as far as some new opportunities with ICC, growth opportunities, and that'll be coming out soon. Can't really speak to it, but be on the look for that. It's kind of exciting news. So, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions for Director Sayers? Great. Thank you again for being at the meeting today.
Thank you.
So any other ICC officers or directors, and I'm just looking through, I'm not seeing any. Carl, if you want to confirm that.
Yep, same here. I looked. I haven't seen anybody, but if you're here, please speak up. I know that Director Brown has got another meeting today, and he sends his regrets to the team today. So. Okay, great. Thank you. Yep. Report from the chair. So, not a whole lot yet. I'm still trying to get used to my new role as chair. So I'm trying to evaluate some things, and Carl and I will be talking a little bit more about where we go from here, especially pending later in the agenda. We have the elections going into 2022. Where do we go? So that's really all I have for today. Report from the vice chair. Tim, do you have anything?
Just one or two small items, and I know Beth mentioned it in the new IFC updates. I attended a webinar yesterday from the Automatic Fire Alarm Association on new technology, and they mentioned the CO updates. So I just want to keep that fresh in everybody's mind that we're not the only ones dealing with the changes, to be expecting the changes, but the industry's also just kind of getting aware of this and having the same questions that we are. Other than that, I know that the building membership council meeting is coming up in December. I know Mark is on the call, so I'll let him talk about it later on and go to the order or comments and questions, but that's all I have right now.
Great, thank you very much. Carl, your report, please.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Just have a few other things to report in addition to what Director Sayers was able to present. So on the topic of bylaws, there are a couple of bylaw amendments that are actually out there and open right now through November the 30th for members to vote on. Director Sayers, did you want to comment on that, or you want me to just kind of cover the quick details on it?
You can go right ahead. That'll be just fine. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So we just have these in our talking points for the month, and I wanted to defer to you now that you've got the bylaws committee firmly in your realm in case you wanted to address that. So The first amendment provides editorial changes and establishes consistency of terms throughout the ICC bylaws. So largely administrative. The second one has got, I believe, 4 parts to it. Eliminate the requirement that the immediate past president maintain GMVR status, increase the signatory threshold for bylaw amendment proposals. The third one is condense the order of business for the ABM to create more flexibility, which is too bad Andy King isn't on here today because I know he's a big fan of always becoming more efficient in these meetings. And then last, expressly list the immediate past president as an officer of the organization. So if you'd like to get in and vote on those, you should have received information on how to do that. If you haven't, reach out to me and I'll be glad to facilitate that for you. Again, that's open through November 30th at the end of the month. Now it's the next piece is that we've extended the Emory Rodgers Fellowship application process to December the 31st. Really trying to get a good pool of candidates together for this. And if you are unfamiliar with this program, it's on our website. I'll put information in the chat here in a minute. But the fellowship gives a $20,000 stipend to cover the full cost of an executive educational program or an executive leadership program. So it's a great opportunity for up and coming leaders, particularly within the codes. We've got a video on it featuring the first person that was awarded this, who's also out in California. And, we've got more information. Either Carla and I can help with that, and I'll be glad to put that in the chat. And then finally, code change proposals for Group B are open in CDP access through January the 10th. You should have all the information you need on that if you participate in the code development process. It's right there at CDP access, but you've got the opportunity to submit through January the 10th of 2022. Other than that, I put together the annual report for the Fire Service Membership Council as part of the larger report on membership councils that the board will review at their January 10th full meeting in California. In that report, we noted that, we take a look at participation rates today, still good numbers. I mean, we've got 33 people in the room and they're all familiar faces for the most part, but we've remained a little bit stagnant or even declined a little bit since middle of the year to the middle of the summer, maybe is about the time that it fell off. And I think we attribute that to 2 things. One is, I think everybody's just tired from all of the stuff that's been happening during COVID and needs to take a deep breath and focus on what's important. Secondly, I think we've got virtual meeting fatigue, and it's hard to keep an audience. So one of the things that was recommended to the board is to make sure as soon as is feasible to be able to do is to get us back to at least 2 of those in-person meetings a year, so that we can continue to do some of the good things that we were able to accomplish at the ABM, although we were in a hybrid environment. So other than that, the FSMC had a really great story to tell, as always. Good metrics, really great outcomes and outputs from all of our work groups. And it was really a pleasure because it made my life fairly easy to be able to report the accomplishments that all of the work group chairs were kind enough to be able to share with me. So it made, again, my staff job pretty easy. So that's all I have for next month. I've proposed to Christine and to Tim that I'll reach out, and I've already done an initial outreach to Chief John Tippett from the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. John is leading the foundation's efforts regarding the National Fire Service Research Agenda. That took place, if you remember, in late spring. And it's really just kind of been in the grinder sense, trying to distill all of the information down, and it's going to be ready for prime time just about this time next month. So we may be one of the first to be able to hear about it, and John's agreed to come on and talk to us a little bit about it. So hopefully we'll have a great speaker, as we always do, for next month's Fire Service Membership Council meeting to wrap up the year. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chief Reed, unless there's any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Carl. Okay, so item number 6 on the agenda, ongoing business. So last month, I asked Mike Desrochers, as chair of the nominating committee, to stand up the committee to accept nominations for chair and vice chair positions of FSMC. And at this meeting, we'll get a report It was, since Michael is not here today, I'm going to ask if Mark can please give the report, and we'll move on from there.
Sure, Chief, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So on the Fire Service Membership Council Nominating Committee, consisting of Chief Robert Buxton, Fire Marshal Michael Desrochers, and myself, Assistant Chief Mark Wassom, received and reviewed 2 nominations for the following positions. Christine Reed to serve as the Membership Council Chair, and Timothy Diehl to serve as the Membership Council Vice Chair. Notwithstanding any nominations from the floor, we would submit to the Fire Service Membership Council Governing Committee for consideration Christine Reed as Chair and Timothy Diehl as Vice Chair. That's our report.
Great. Thank you, Mark. So correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, do we have an election this month or does it wait until next month?
I was going to put it on the agenda for next month.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that report and the work that yourself, Robert, and Michael did. We appreciate your effort. So we will continue this for elections next month's meeting. Next item is new business. This is more of a reminder. I've heard it a couple on the work group meeting updates that we already had today, that we do have work group goals and objectives that will be due at the beginning for 2022. So if you all can think about what you would like to accomplish, where do you see your work group efforts being a benefit to, things that you can either carry over from 2021 that perhaps you didn't completely accomplish this year, so we can make 2022 as effective as we have in 2021. So just a reminder, if you can please get those goals and objectives into Carl as soon as you can. I'm hearing in December work group meetings that will be discussed. So hopefully either by the end of the year or the beginning of January would be appreciated.
Yeah, and I will just pile on to that and say if we could do that by next meeting, if not shortly thereafter, I'd love to have that stuff just primed and ready to go coming into the new year, so we have all of our paperwork organized and I can distribute all of that information out with your approval. Great, thank you. That works. All right. Next meeting is Thursday, December 16th, 1:30 Eastern on Microsoft Teams. I would like to now open it up for any questions or comments from the audience. This is the time for anyone that's on the call to ask questions, get information, be able to have your voice be heard with any issues or concerns that you may have. So I'll open it up to the floor. You can raise your hand within Teams and we will call on you. And I'm not seeing any hands at the moment. I'll open it up to anyone else in the governing committee if you have any things you'd wish to say. Okay, so last is good of the order. One last call. Yes, Director Sayers.
Yes, thank you, Chief Reed. You know, one thing I want to bring up, and you probably already realize this, is that ICC staff does such an awesome job. And Carl, thank you so much for all the hard work you do. I guess what I'm saying is I continue to be completely, you know, thrilled with the things that I see from our staff. Anytime I've got questions, anytime somebody poses a question to me and I turn it over to staff, I get these great responses and they're timely. And so I just want to make sure that you recognize ICC staff and tell Carl thank you now and then. He appreciates that.
Yes, I completely ditto your comments. Carl has been a lifesaver for me as well as FSMC many times over. So we certainly appreciate his efforts, but thank you for that comment. Mark. I'm sorry, Mark Matheny. We have a couple of Marks on the call.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. I guess early congratulations to you and Tim. I guess it's official next month, hopefully, but just want to throw it out there. And since Tim did call it out, I do want to just identify a BMC meeting will be on 12/15 at 3 p.m. We don't have the agenda set quite yet. It should be coming before too awfully long. You know, and it's a big meeting for us. We're going to have a pretty good structural shift as to duties and responsibilities. And we really want to, just as you guys just mentioned, you know, we really want to establish all of that at that December meeting, because we really want to jump into January full on with, we have basically new people chairing our subcommittees. Ed's taking over as chair, I'm taking over as vice chair. So there's a lot of mix that's happening. We're going to get information out early to everybody so that we can kind of get that running, and certainly welcome anybody's participation. And additionally, you know, we've also looked at some ways to work, continue our collaboration with Fire Service Membership Council, and maybe work even a little more detailed into that. So appreciate the time to speak today.
Great, thank you, and thank you, or congratulations in your new position.
Thank you.
Carl, your hand is up.
My hand is up. I wanted to first say thanks to Director Sayers and the rest of you. You make it very easy to work here, and I enjoy the work. So the fact that I get paid to do this job is just an additional benefit. So it's a lot of fun. But what I wanted to mention, and so the reason my hand was up, I'm trying to actually take it down now, is that I wanted to let everyone know that the staff were briefed, and this will not be news to Director Sayers at all too, but the staff were briefed that there will be potentially an agenda item each month that President Davis has set onto the board schedule, or each time that they have a meeting, to specifically discuss membership council liaison activities. And I wanted to just stress to everyone here, you know, we had a really great relationship with Bill Bryan. We have an awesome relationship with Director Sayers. And I would say that, you know, leverage that opportunity to be able to get that kind of direct messaging right to the board. And if you have points during the month that you want to bring up, this is a really great forum to be able to do it, because I'm sure Director Sayers will be looking for that content when he is called on in the midst of the board meeting. But it's your chance to get right in there and have some direct impact at the board level, well beyond the kind of the normal things that we do every day. So Director Sayers, I guess I would, you know, throw that your way if you had any additional comments, but thought that was important to bring up here too, going into next month's meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I feverishly took notes here during the meeting so I can put my report together and you know, be a good director and get that turned in. But I think it's a great addition to our board meetings to have the reports from the council, so that, you know, everybody gets a chance of knowing what's going on, and not just the person that was assigned or happened to be on a call.
Great, thank you for that. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands up. Last call. All right, so before I make a motion to adjourn, or ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday next week. Hopefully you have some time to be able to decompress a little bit and relax, and still stay safe with whatever you're doing during the holiday weekend. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn. This is Tim.
I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Buxton.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you at next meeting.
Take care.
Bye-bye.